order. We have a quorum. We have one member running late. We have President McCaig online because she's not feeling well, but we can get started. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the July 22nd, 2025 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay, then we can move on to number 3, which is the introduction of a request by zoning petition to rezone 4449 to 4453 North Oakland Avenue from MX1 mixed use storefront to GX1 general residential office mix.
Okay. If I can do this right. President McCaig, I see you're online. If you can just confirm if you can see my slides, that would be great. Never see the time. Oh, do that to me.
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So thank you, Trustee McGovern. So once again, we are here to review a request for rezone of 4449 through 4453 North Oakland Avenue. Just as a matter of reference, this is the review and approval process for applications to rezone. They are required to go to the Plan Commission for introduction at the first meeting prior to possible recommendation at the second meeting. So once again, this meeting here is primarily for introduction so that you all are familiar with the application. You have a chance to review the materials, ask questions, ask staff to follow up with anything if so needed. So we are here August 26th with the introduction meeting. Plan Commission possible recommendation would be September 23rd, followed by a public hearing in front of the village board on October 6th, after which the village board could consider the application. So that's best case scenario. If there's other things that need to happen, the schedule is flexible, but that is likely where things will proceed. It's just a matter of quick overview. Once again, the materials are in your packet. The village has received a request to rezone the property at 4449 50 through 53 North Oakland Avenue from MX1 to GX1. So from our mixed use district to our general district. The new owner would like to obtain occupancy for an office use. In the lower right corner, there's just a general floor plan showing the building. The first floor has 2 spaces. One in the front had historically been used for retail. There's a residential unit in the back, and then there's residential above as well. He's seeking to rezone it to MX1 because MX1 is not does not allow office uses in the first 20 feet of occupied space. So once again, in our commercial zoning update, we did have a zoning scheme that required more active uses in the front of buildings zoned MX1, which this building currently is. The existing zoning was updated in 2023 as part of that larger corridor-wide plan. This particular property, for those of you that were involved and can remember, was debated. It was zoned MX1 ultimately in the final draft in consideration of the storefront building that exists on the site and the existing retail use. And so GX1 was initially considered because of the neighboring uses. So the neighboring uses to the north and south are not mixed use. And so the whole idea of an active cluster was less feasible in the initial discussion. But ultimately, the village did choose to recommend to zone it MX1 in consideration of that building and that retail use, primarily just because it was a prime example of where people thought that type of use would flourish. So it was chosen as MX1. The new property owner has a different vision for the property in mind. So we are here just to review their application and consider their points. So once again, we are here for discussion. Tonight's meeting, I did meet with the Business Improvement District last Wednesday. I wasn't expecting for them to be able to give us a response so quickly, but they did provide a letter this morning, which I updated in the village packet. But once again, just for introduction, saying that they were in favor of keeping the existing use. I think that was their perspective in the commercial zoning update as well. And so I think nothing has changed from their perspective in terms of they think that this would be a prime space for retail or restaurant type of uses. But then once again, if rezoned to allow that office use, just so that you're all aware, retail, eating and drinking, and artisan manufacturing would be limited. And so we've identified places where we think those should be and where they would thrive. If we were to rezone this in the future, that type of use would be very limited in terms of where it could go, unless once again the zoning scheme has changed, which was a very long defined process. So that's a matter of my introduction. I know the applicant is here as well. But I'll turn it back over to Trustee McGovern to just facilitate discussion or ask any questions that you might have.
Well, I guess I'd want to start by asking any of the other members of the commission if they have any comment or questions. Yes.
Question, Mr. Green-Drop, is the requested zoning district consistent with the village comprehensive plan?
Yes, because the village comprehensive plan shows the entire corridor as Main Street mixed use, which acknowledges there will be a mix of residential, office, and retail. And so when we did the comprehensive plan, the whole corridor was
Mhm.
defined as that Main Street mixed use. The zoning is more specific. And so either use is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Second question, the zoning map, it appeared that on either side of the lot in question and the zoning across the street is similar, the same zoning that the applicant's requesting, correct? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, correct. It's the mid block. Like I said, the zoning consultant that we worked with initially did have this as GX1. But in discussion of individual uses, just for your reference, because you weren't here at the time, I did provide a list of properties that would become non-conforming with the new zoning scheme. And we kind of identified which ones of those were worth discussion. So this one would have become non-conforming with the retail use. And so it was just identified in that process. And then through the course of discussion was changed to be MX1 based on the storefront building and the existing use.
Anyone else?
I'll just make a general comment that I participated in the commercial zoning update process, and it was exhaustive. It was a year-long process of going through the zoning code with a fine-tooth comb, with a consultant, with numerous public engagement opportunities. And it was something that is directly connected to the comprehensive plan as an output. So I feel like if we were to make any changes, it would have to be a very compelling reason because of all the work that has led up to this point, including numerous citizens who have participated in the process. So if we were to make an exception in this case, we would potentially be going against the wishes of the community.
Yep. Anyone else? I mean, I guess I would kind of tend to agree with you on this one in particular, just there's not a lot of properties like that on that block. And, the purpose of maintaining that type of zoning is to sort of try to activate that area with retail. And, there's lots of places that are, available for office use throughout Shorewood. But I guess I'd like to open it up to the applicant if you wanted to speak.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Andrew Burkholtz. I'm the owner of the parcel located at 4449 through 4453 North Oakland Avenue. I'm also the owner of a business called Scani Solutions LLC, which I do a DBA under Scani Properties. My business is focused on the ownership, development, and rental management of properties within the state of Wisconsin, as well as right here in the village of Shorewood. I'm requesting the rezoning of the location from MX1 to the GX1 status to help support the growth of what I genuinely hope will be my long-term home, headquartered right here in Shorewood as a business. Rezoning is actually essential because my business doesn't have a retail component to it, nor do I have any interest in utilizing or leasing the property for retail use at this time. There's also a lot of unknowns at the village have made it not exactly conducive to immediate retail use, such as the pending year-long reconstruction of North Oakland Avenue, as well as the loss of the public parking immediately adjacent at 4450 North Oakland Avenue, which is adjacent to my lot. Moreover, it's essential that the building which I own obtains a proper zoning designation for the type of business that I own and operate. This is needed so I can ultimately obtain occupancy of the building. I have a proven track record of business growth in the state of Wisconsin and a longtime supply partner to the village of Shorewood. My background is as an owner of TAPCO, Traffic and Parking Control, located at Brown Deer. Work with Tyler Burkhart. I've been a part of the Ghost Train, every single crosswalk system, street name in the village of Shorewood. That's my business. I'm also passionate about community development and the support of local nonprofits in the area. That's not just hyperbole. I've set up funds for that, which I would love to build here within Shorewood. I fully intend on bringing all these same resources to the village of Shorewood and being a tremendous long-term community partner. I'm also willing to consider the input of the Shorewood community for the development of mixed-use needs, such as a restaurant. However, given the nature of my business and the immediate necessity for office rezoning, I can't consider any of those uses beyond office and residential until my business actually becomes operational. I'd love to put a sign out front. This is why a GX1 zoning designation is necessary. And I also need to assess, the impact of the loss of public parking across the street and the year-long construction would have on such a restaurant, quite frankly. I wouldn't honestly open it until that was completed. The property also at 4451 North Oakland has a track record of supporting successful office-based businesses, such as the Allstate Agency, which is owned by Andrew McCabe, who I consulted with prior to purchasing the property and realized he operated there. He's also provided a letter of support that we can enter into record for occupancy of that space for office use. And more recent, the brick and mortar retail storefront that I inherited was ultimately not viable and quite frankly left vacant, and the owner left town and left me kind of with a mess. Prior to my ownership, the intended business and development plans in the retail space have remained vacant. Moreover, though, as a village business and property owner, I'll develop, grow, and support our community in ways that I sincerely hope will be well received from the village. I appreciate the village's consideration and willingness to rezone the property and mentioned to GX1 status. And in general, I live a mile away. I own the parcel and the building, and I want to be a tremendous community partner for time to come. So to do that, it's essential, quite frankly. Thank you for your time.
I just have one question. Are the residential units occupied now? Okay. Okay. Okay.
Apologies, I can't hear the speaker.
Okay. Yeah, you got to talk into the mic because
The question was if it was, there's currently renters and is it occupied? And the answer is yes. I have 2 renters on the 2nd floor. My current 1st floor space is vacating on September 2nd, which I would like to take the entirety of the 1st floor for office use at that location.
okay. And so then would the residential would stay the same for now?
It would be as far as the designation of mixed use, the 2 units above, yes.
Okay.
Honestly, I wouldn't have intended additional development for like say a restaurant, which I agree, a great location if the public parking remains for a restaurant, but I wouldn't even honestly consider that until I understand what's going on with the public parking across the street long-term, as well as the Oakland reconstruction. So that's not part of my current plans, but certainly something I would consider in the future after the business is up and operable.
Okay. Thanks.
Sorry, if there's any other questions. Back up.
Okay. Okay.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Patrick Hallahan. I'm counsel for Andy Burkholz. I will do my best not to be a lawyer and talk too much here. But we did obtain a letter of support from Andrew McCabe of McCabe Group Insurance Services today. We were not able to file it timely, but I was hoping I could either read it into the record or enter it into the record physically. Is reading it okay?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. So dear Mr. Griepentrag and Plan Commission members, I am a longtime business owner in the village of Shorewood, and I'm writing this in support of Andrew Burkholz's petition to rezone property located at 4449-4453 North Oakland Ave from MX1 to GX1. I currently own and operate McCabe Insurance and have known Andrew Burkholz for many years. I can attest to the fact that Mr. Burkholz is a successful business owner, most recently having been an owner of Traffic and Parking Control Co., Inc., APCO, in Brown Deer, Wisconsin. In addition to Mr. Burkholz's business success, he is also passionate about community development and believes that businesses should support and elevate the communities in which they operate. I have no doubt that Mr. Burkholz will improve the property at 4449-4453 North Oakland Ave and turn it into a vibrant business that will benefit the neighborhood and surrounding businesses. I also support Mr. Burkholz's petition as a former occupant of 4451 North Oakland Ave. For many years, I operated McCabe Insurance Group out of the same space Mr. Burkholz is seeking to rezone his office. Rezoning 44-49 to 44-53 North Oakland from MX1 to GX1 makes sense, as it would be in keeping with both historical and successful uses of the property. As I noted above, Mr. Burkholz's intended plans will improve the property and benefit the neighborhood and community as a whole. It just makes sense to remove the hurdles facing entrepreneurs who want to locate businesses in Shorewood. If any of you have questions, do not hesitate to contact. And I will submit a digital copy to Mr. Krieger-Krog.
Great. Okay, thank you. Are there any members of the public here or online that wanted to say something on this? Okay. And you're not looking for a motion or anything?
No, correct. This is just for introduction. So with that, we could close discussion and I would bring it back in September with any additional information that comes through. But in general, that's the understanding of the presentation.
Okay. Well, then we can move on to item number 4, which is further discussion of the Plan Commission's proposed initiative to increase housing opportunities in the village accessory dwelling units.
Let me just try to get this going again. Oh. There we go. Hopefully, President McKeag, you can see slide number 4, housing opportunities. Is that correct? Or not?
No.
No. Okay. I might need Commissioner Klein to show me what I'm doing wrong here.
But I do have the materials you provided in the packet.
Okay.
So
This one. Can you see it now?
yes, I can.
Okay, there we go. Thank you very much. So yes, thank you, Trustee McGovern. Just as a matter of brief introduction for those that have not followed this, for the past several months, the Plan Commission has been working on an initiative to look at increasing housing opportunities within the village. Once again, this was your 2025 initiative that we're working on. We've utilized reference materials, including the comprehensive housing market study and needs analysis, our comp plan, equity and zoning policy guide, and enabling better places as documents for reference. We've also discussed a number of issues, including a household definition update, bedrooms and basements, accessory dwelling units, which is this item, and then duplex restrictions is going to be moving forward. Long-term missing middle options and anything else that the Plan Commission wants to discuss. We're happy to do that within this forum. As a matter of overview, accessory dwelling units, ADUs, are technically smaller independent residential units accessory to the primary residential use, which is typically a 1 or 2 unit household. And so they're not a duplex with respect to being equal to that unit. They're definitely smaller and accessory to that primary use. ADUs can be internal, attached or detached. And on the right-hand side is a nice graphic provided by the city of St. Paul, Minnesota, just kind of showing what those look like. So internal ADUs are typically within an attic or a basement. Attached ADUs would be a small addition, obviously, to the existing primary structure. And then a detached ADU would be the conversion or modification of part or all of the accessory structure, the garage, as a detached unit. So those are the options that many communities contemplate. For matter of reference, these are not currently permitted in the village of Shorewood. just a general overview, ADUs are seen as a way to create and diversify housing options within existing neighborhoods. This is not a commercial, use. That would be more of an apartment building, multifamily. This is, for within neighborhoods. ADUs, however, can be costly to create. The cost of labor and materials for a small unit is oftentimes prohibitive for someone to make that investment, including the price of utility hookups. In part because of that, they have not been widely adopted within the region. They are permitted in Wauwatosa since 2019. However, only 2 have been constructed in that time. And in order to try to kickstart the development of ADUs, Wauwatosa is now actually incentivizing the creation of those. To my knowledge, no one has even applied for that yet. So once again, they're allowed, but they're not necessarily seen as a large use. So it's a matter of finding the right lot and the right person that wants to develop it. They were recently reintroduced into Milwaukee zoning, as I mentioned in our the staff report. And so Milwaukee had for a long time allowed them. They were known as Polish flats and other things in the community. They're very part and parcel of neighborhoods. They were zoned out within the 1950s and brought back recently. Once again, we'll see where that goes in terms of being able to finance and find a place for them, but they are now recently reallowed. I did provide a comparison of those regulations within your packet. I don't want to go through these word by word, but just for general purposes, regulations typically identify where ADUs are allowed. As I mentioned, typically within a 1 or 2 unit lot. How many are allowed is typically only 1. ADUs can be internal, attached, or detached. Both communities allow all 3. They do have ADU maximum sizes, and so they definitely have to be less than the primary unit. And then Wauwatosa, they're allowed to be up to 900 square feet. In Milwaukee, 1,000 square feet or 1,300 square feet if the lot is quite large. Once again, it's less than a duplex, so it's not an equal unit in terms of space. They do also have maximum heights if they are detached. So in Wauwatosa, the maximum height is 20 feet unless it's part of the building. Milwaukee actually allows the ADU to be the same height as the principal building, so they allow it to be taller if the principal building is taller. Some communities regulate entrance locations. Some have architectural standards. All of that stuff is for us to debate if we do want to move down that path. Milwaukee does have an owner occupancy requirement at the time of construction, but after that, it's hard, if not impossible, to enforce that. So just keep that in mind. It could be a way to work with someone, but after that person develops it, that kind of regulation goes away. Parking is one of the primary issues and concerns that comes up with ADUs. So in Wauwatosa, you are required to maintain parking for your existing dwelling, but the new ADU does not have to have parking. In Milwaukee, they don't require parking for 1 or 2 unit buildings, and so they don't qualify. But yes, in Wauwatosa, they are required to maintain that existing parking, but they are not required to develop new. That will definitely come up in our conversations. I did provide some initial comments in which some residents have already mentioned that. So just a quick overview of what I've heard so far. Pros are these are smaller units that typically can be more affordable, and so it is seen as a way of increasing affordable options within the village. It does create an opportunity for homeowner income if that homeowner is able to rent it out. But they also do allow multi-generational living and aging in place if they build it for a family member that, just needs a smaller unit and can still live on the same lot and provide that multi-generational atmosphere. And the pro is they are developed in the currently allowed footprint. So the setback and lot coverage does not change. So you would be able to build a 1-unit house of the same size and dimensions as you would a 1-unit plus the ADU. And so from a looks and feel standpoint, it kind of maintains that footprint. However, from a usage standpoint, there is 1 additional household there, and there could be additional parking with it. So I have heard in the comments and for discussion, what does additional parking mean or look like with ADUs? And then there's also concerns that these ADUs could be developed for short-term rentals, and the village has historically had difficulties with enforcing short-term rentals because the state has prohibited us from doing so in a very straightforward manner. So that's just kind of what I've seen so far. But within your packet, I did include for tonight's discussion possible regulations that I feel could perhaps be discussed or developed within Shorewood for then once again greater public comment. So the purpose of tonight's meeting was kind of kickstart conversation with the Plan Commission to understand what questions you might have, what thoughts you might have, so that we can possibly develop a proposal that we would then go out for larger public engagement with. So I think I can come back to this slide if we want to discuss it. Just in terms of next steps, we are here to confirm a desire to continue the discussion of ADUs and refine possible permissions, so where and how we would allow them. identify additional questions for research, at which point then we can perform public outreach, bring that back to the Plan Commission to consider possible recommendations for the village board, which require a public hearing and village board vote. So that's kind of an overview of what I've prepared. Once again, I can go back to this slide, which kind of identifies things that we might need or want to discuss within possible regulations, if so desired to move forward with.
Great. Thank you, Bart. Would any members of the commission like to weigh in? Anyone?
I had one question and we went over this, I apologize, but we have some ADUs in the village. Do we have a count on that?
I
don't know how you would know, right?
Yeah, I don't, because they're not defined as an ADU in our addressing system. It'd be
Yeah.
Another number for another lot. But yes, they were probably developed prior to zoning regulations prohibiting them,
Yep.
similar to the city of Milwaukee. But I don't have a count on where those might be or how many there would be either. But it's something we can possibly try to research.
Yeah, 'cause
Are those units above garages that you're referring to, or?
I've seen a variety. Like I've seen some over garages. I've seen some as like on the lakefront, there's individual buildings that maybe was a garage someday, but now it's a full living space. Like carriage house, thank you.
Yeah, I think there probably are more common with larger lots and,
Yeah.
lakefront lots that would have had more space to develop them. We do have some, garage units that in recent years have added like storage space above because they're prohibited from being able to develop as a residential unit. But people do, build above their garages right now for purposes other than residential. But historically, they might have already existed as well.
I think that's something that the public, maybe we should mind the public when we talk about this. It already exists in our village.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if I could find examples perhaps of them, and so people can understand that they do exist. I just don't have that unfortunately available at the moment, but we can look, and the building inspectors have a great knowledge of individual houses and neighborhoods, and so I can ask them if anything rings a bell to them.
Anyone else? Or
I'm generally, yes. Move forward unless there are concerns.
okay. Michael?
Could you go back to the slide with the pros and cons?
Sure. And these aren't all inclusive by any means. This is just what I've received to date and what I've heard from people in discussion. So yeah, this is a starting point perhaps.
Question about the last one, the concerns of short-term rentals and difficulty. Hey, wouldn't that have that type of a concern for any type of unit, short-term rental?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
why would it be, I guess, question is, why would it be any more of a concern for an ADU than, I don't know, any other unit?
Yeah, I've just received public comment that there's a belief or presumption that people might build them, for solely for profit purposes and not for, community, multi-generational kind of thing. And so I think when advocates say these are going to be great, they're going to provide multi-generational living, they're going to provide affordable housing, then the opponents say, but that's not guaranteed. What actually could happen is it could be a short-term rental. To your point, that could happen in an existing single-family house or a duplex currently. The state has kind of made it very difficult for municipalities to do anything about that. And so I think just perhaps the concept of more housing makes some people think this could be more short-term, which is not always compatible with everyone's vision of their neighbor. So
I also think, in one of the pros is, well, mom can live there because she can't live by herself elsewhere. Well, like the rest of us, mom's not going to live forever either, and so there'd be some other use of it afterwards.
correct. Yep. So the advocates, find this to be a very positive thing in terms of providing more options. And then there's just people who, in general don't share that view, and they have pointed to short-term rentals being something the village should make a note of in our deliberation. So just sharing it for reference in terms of what I've heard.
Thank you.
Bart, do you know, are we collecting the, I think it's an 8% room tax that Airbnb is supposed to pay?
So the village does not have a room tax. We have to adopt
We
that.
have to.
And then in Wisconsin, if you have that room tax, it has to be used. It's segregated. It has to be used for tourism purposes to a certain proportion. And so a lot of communities that do have a room tax will use that money for a convention and visitors bureau or some kind of, marketing thing. I don't believe, well, I know that you can't use it all for general purposes. I don't know what the percentage currently is, but we to this point have not adopted that for Airbnbs or short-term rentals. Anytime I've researched the concept of short-term rental enforcement and regulation, it's a lot of work for not much different results or output. So if the village board wanted to, rediscuss that with any other thing, we definitely could. But in the past, it has always been, larger municipalities are able to do it because they have more staff and they have more enforcement powers on that. It's something that we have struggled to identify as how best we could do it. So when that was discussed, probably it was before the DNC was going to be here in 2020. When that was discussed at the time, we kind of tabled it for, in case it came up again.
Right. Okay. President McCaig, did you have any questions or comments on this one?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I appreciated having the emails from residents included in our materials. And similar to the concern around short-term rental use, was also the idea of that a property could be more attractive to a developer who would purchase a property for the sole purposes of being able to add an ADU. Any thoughts on that? I mean, I guess it's similar to the environment that we're in now, whereas there's nothing to stop someone from purchasing a property and redeveloping it and selling it. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, a lot of the housing market is free market, kind of based on what zoning code allows. But yeah, people do buy duplexes and make them into single unit households without village necessarily involvement. So if the zoning allows this, it's an opportunity to possibly do that. Once again, I would share that the cost of developing the ADU is typically prohibitive in terms of being able to get a lot of revenue from it because it is a smaller unit. So you're not getting a 2 or 3 bedroom unit that could provide, the income needed to pay back that borrowing. So in other communities, that's kind of been the case in terms of if you allow it, it still is costly and it's typically the person that really wants it that's going to pursue it and not necessarily an investment scheme. But there's no guarantees that the market won't change and that could be different in the future. But yeah, currently that is not something that I would expect to see.
Okay. Yeah, so it's self-limiting for all of those reasons in practice. All right, thank you.
I have a question about how many properties would be eligible. So would that be something that is created within the regulations? And I'm thinking about streets that have alleys versus larger parcels. I live in a neighborhood with an alley where people park on their aprons and it's a different, I think, feeling of the neighborhood versus a larger lot.
So the answer to that question kind of depends on what regulations we look at, right? So in my possible definitions here, this is not a recommendation or anything. This is just in terms of guiding discussion. Looking at how these are in most communities, we would probably look at our R1 through R6 districts, which are our 1 and 2 household districts. But with that, if you already built to capacity, then you can't add another one. So that would be self-limiting unless you're doing it internally, attic or basement. So you couldn't add space, but you could perhaps renovate vacant space. And so we don't necessarily have easy ways to access that. But in general, you're looking at pretty much any lot in the residential quadrants in the R1 through R6 districts. And then to the point of parking, that would be, I think, a very critical factor for people in terms of if the village requires you to keep what you're currently required to have and then add to it, there's not a lot of space to add parking into backyards. And so if that's something that we would do, we would definitely be limiting where they could go. I can't run a quick number on that in terms of, square footage and things like that. But to answer your question, it would start pretty broadly in residential neighborhoods and then start winnowing itself down based on what we, feel comfortable adopting here as a village. So, but it is intended for residential neighborhoods as an option as opposed to the commercial district, which we've discussed in the commercial zoning update and height capacity and density and things like that. So this is a different option that hasn't really been explored, despite the fact that it's been on our to-do list for a while.
Anyone else? Yep.
One more question about the owner occupancy issue. So you had mentioned that that's not something that can be regulated. I'm just curious about, so there is this vision that people have about having aging in place, and I see this as a great opportunity to do that, but also the point about once the property is sold, then you essentially have 2 units then that are not.
Even before it's sold, like, someone can rent out, you know, if you're on a sabbatical for a year, you rent out your house. We don't know that as a village. So owner occupancy is not reported to us. And so the concept of requiring you to be owner occupied at the time of development is something that we can easily confirm because you're coming to us and you can show verification of that. As soon as it's built and occupied, once again, if you choose to rent your house out because you're gonna, you know, live somewhere else for the year and you want to hold on to it as an asset, I'm just being honest in terms of what the village can realistically regulate and enforce. And so Milwaukee did add that as a requirement to build it. That would be easy enough for us to do. But in terms of moving forward, I want to be very honest with, as soon as it's constructed and built, that's then the horse is out of the barn at that point. So
I think that'll be essential when we do the public engagement strategy for this, I think that there is a lot of enthusiasm for ADUs, and I personally think it's great to explore flexibility for homeowners, property owners, but also to tease out the complexity that we're as effectively as.
Yeah, and I'm generally in favor of all this. You know, I particularly like the idea of giving Shorewood homeowners some flexibility in, you know, developing an addition on their house for a relative or for whatever reason they want. And I, a long time ago, lived in one of these. It was above a garage in Juneau, Alaska. I was there about a year. It was really nice and affordable for this is a long time ago, so I can say a young person. And, you know, we've definitely gotten a lot of interest from, you know, we see it in the emails, on social media as well. And for people that are not in favor of it, I guess the good news is when Wauwatosa did this, only 2 people did it. Madison had, I believe 32 in the past 12 years. You know, Madison's 20 times the size of Shorewood. And, you know, it's expensive. It's a big project if you want to do this to your house. So I envision, if we went forward with this, we might have a couple here and there, but it's going to be, in my view, a step in the right direction, but a small step. And one thing I think that's probably holds this back in some of these communities is, you know, the costs and there's all these other problems that you've kind of laid out. I think the parking will be a problem, and I just think we should make sure that we don't sort of unintentionally have a barrier by mandating parking. You know, I think the homeowner and the renter can handle that. I think most landlords prefer to offer parking as an amenity, but I don't think it needs to necessarily be a government mandate. And sometimes these have unintended consequences. My house, I live on Wildwood. Both my next door neighbor and the house across the street have added a parking pad this summer, paving over part of their lawn. And, you know, we just had this huge flood. We've invested a lot of money in rain gardens and trying to manage rainwater. I think some of these parking requirements might have kind of the unintended consequence of encouraging more people to pave over their lawn, and it would drive up the cost of any ADU as well. So I think that's something we'll have to look at going forward. But generally, I'm in favor of this. So we didn't have an agenda item for public comment, but is there any member of the public or online who'd like to speak? Yes, come up to the mic.
Hi, Barbara Kiley Miller, 4051 North Downer Avenue. I thought the information on the ADUs in your packet was very interesting, and I really appreciate all of the photos so we could see exactly what these different structures might look like. I just made a couple notes as I read through it. On page 22 of your packet, it said that some cities and communities have allowed ADUs in low-density residential areas. since Shorewood probably still has the highest density in the state of Wisconsin, I'm not sure that that applies to the village unless, again, we're talking about those properties along Lake Drive. I was very pleased to see in Bart's draft of some possible outlines or requirements that an ADU would not be allowed to be built in a rear or side yard setback. Some of you may recall that a few years ago, the Plan Commission decided to allow patios in those setbacks, but not any structures, like say a pergola over that. And the same when we allowed porches in the side yard setback, but any roof over it could only extend about 3 feet. And the reason for that was for fire protection, so that fire would not spread from one property to a neighboring property. So I thought that was great that you included that. My only concern is that currently property owners can build a 6-foot fence around their backyard, except for areas that are directly adjacent to a neighboring primary residence, unless they get a variance from the Board of Appeals, which is what I had to do. So if an ADU is built in a backyard, whether it's attached or standalone, I think that neighbors should still be allowed to erect a 6-foot fence around their backyard, even if it's going to be adjacent to that ADU. Because, you know, even with our tiny little backyards in Shorewood, that's still our little green oasis in a dense urban community. So that's one of those standing regulations that as you go forward, you're going to have to look at, okay, what else are we going to have to change in the code? That just keep that on your checklist of, you know, the fencing requirements that's going to need to be addressed as well. Otherwise, you know, I think it's a great idea. My niece and her husband just bought a property in Bayview that has a standalone bungalow behind the duplex. And I've toured other ADUs in Bayview that, you know, it adds a great, well, you know, they're great for all the reasons you've already discussed. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else here in person or online? You come to the mic. And just please state your name and your
I'm
address.
Sally Dregarian, 4060 North Farwell. I didn't plan to speak, but listening, I just wanted to listen, and we're at an age where our families are not here, and we think we might want to spend considerable amounts of time away from Shorewood, and we really don't need our gigantic house. And so we've been thinking about what kinds of arrangements we can make. And one of the things that I remember is when we moved into our house 30 years ago, there had been someone living in the basement. We didn't even know about it. And I don't think they made any waves, you know. I don't think anybody knew. They were students at UWM. And that certainly wouldn't affect the neighborhood, particularly if people were allowed to do things like that. The other thing I wanted to mention is parking. Again, we don't park in our garage. And if we were to build an ADU, it would be where the garage is. And it would be really impossible to build an ADU if we had to retain garage parking. But there's plenty of driveway to park in, and that's what we've been doing for 30 years. So those are my comments, and I think it's a great idea, but I understand that the cost could be prohibitive for many uses, but I encourage it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Burkholz again with 4451 North Oakland. There's a lot of discussion about single families and things like that, but as someone who's a developer too, and also has a background within parking, I think an ADU, first I holistically support the development and the approval of ADUs. I think it actually incentivizes property owners to address parking issues for someone that currently has a very old, antiquated, flat roof, 4-stall garage that's a complete eyesore in an alleyway. If these were approved, which is a garage that I have to tear down probably in short order anyway, and I could somehow get one, and again, we're talking about one unit really here, 1,000 square foot, something like that. additional rental income within that lot. People like options, not ultimatums. That would be a wonderful option, and just, I wouldn't necessarily say, just limit it because of the developers. I think that if you can get an extra rental unit out and also do all the other things with aging family, which I have as well and can thoroughly understand, I think that's a really good thing. So I appreciate the village and their consideration for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Other questions or comments? And you have what you need, Bart? You don't need a motion? or
I do.
anything?
So I
Okay.
will bring back some more refined materials next month that hopefully we can at that point, by consensus, decide to move forward with greater public engagement. So the plan the whole time was to kind of move these things along for public engagement this fall. And so if things come up in the next month or so, but I would like to bring it back in September, just kind of like to put some final comments together. And then at that point, we can discuss how to get further public engagement before, further recommending anything to the board.
Great. Okay, thank you. Well, then let's move on to number 5, which is further discussion of the Plan Commission's proposed initiative to increase housing opportunities in the village, household definition, and bedrooms in basement update.
Okay, if I can't share the screen, there really isn't much to share in this, but other than what's in your packet. So at last meeting, we did discuss, let me just give it a shot. That didn't do what it did last time. I am sure that you can't see that because it looks weird on my screen. President McKay, can you see this? Apologies for putting you on the spot.
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. So yeah, at last meeting, we just discussed updating our housing opportunity definition. And so the primary limiting factor currently within our code is that we don't allow more than 3 non-related adults to live together, which precludes the opportunity for perhaps 2 partnerships to, share a house. Once again, seen as an aging in place kind of thing where you can, more cohabitate with people that you choose to, as opposed to people that you were necessarily related to. So at the last Plan Commission meeting, we did discuss by consensus moving forward with this definition. The changes are shown in red here. So we did add, so we modified persons to adults, and we added civil union and domestic partnerships, and we updated it from 3 to 4 adults. And so that's where we were at. And then we moved all children related by blood, adoption, legal guardianship to an adult in the household to its own category. So this was how we discussed it in terms of moving forward. So once again, this is what we will present for greater public engagement. If people have thoughts or questions on that, technically we are not excluding community living arrangements, foster homes, or adult family homes per state statutes. That will still remain in the definition. And then with that, just for your reference, I did share how often the word family is used within our code. It would require an extensive code update to transfer all those references of family to household, but I think I've caught them all. So it's just a matter of preparing a rather lengthy ordinance amendment to kind of clean all that up. But the primary discussion point within your recommendation will be to update from 3 to 4, and then just to clean up those other omissions that just hadn't been changed in years. So unless there's further discussion on it, that's all I really had. It's just confirming what I heard last meeting and then preparing for future engagement.
Okay. Any members of the commission have questions or comments? President McKay? And anyone from the public or online, like in person or online? Yeah.
I just really like the idea of making 4 adults because I think that 2 families sharing a big house is a very sensible thing.
Great,
And there's no reason not to do it.
great. Thank you.
Trustee McGovern, I was just going to
Yes.
say that it took me a while to get on mute. I don't have
Okay.
anything to add, and I think this reflects our prior discussion. So thank you.
Yeah,
Downstairs.
exactly. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, with that, that's
Okay.
pretty much it. Once again, this is just more of an update. And then also within the same item, bedrooms and basements, this one's even more no brainer perhaps. So we would just be removing from our current minimum space use and location requirements, that prohibition for no space in a basement in any R district may be used for sleeping purposes or as a dwelling unit. So once again, hand in hand with ADUs and with other things that we've heard within this conversation. And so this would be an easy strike of that within the code. We'll take that once again to public engagement before getting a recommendation and going to the board to request that change.
Then we can move on to number 6, which is future agenda items. Does anybody have one? I don't think there are any.
Nothing has been submitted to my office for reference. So just, yeah, we'll come back in September with once again some more cleanup of the things that we've discussed. I will possibly introduce within that meeting then the notion of re-allowing duplexes in our historic duplex neighborhoods. And so once again, there's a simple part of our code that prohibits that. We can discuss whether or not you as the Plan Commission want to get public engagement on that. We will then have those 4 topics then to plan engagement efforts with and around. But then, yeah, primarily, we will also be seeing the application back from Mr. Bergholz for formal recommendation to the board. So there's at least 2 items that we'll be discussing in September.
Great. Then do I hear a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Well, then this meeting of the Plan Commission is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone, for my technical difficulties as well. We'll see you next month.